What's up guys, it's Alex here, your friendly reef dog. Now, last week I did a video showing you around my tank and talking through my journey from day one all the way through to 7 months. And I got lots of questions asking me what equipment I run. So I decided to make this video to show you all of my equipment and tell you what I think I've got right and what I would change if I was starting again today. Let's take a look. I'm going to start at the top of my tank and work my way down. I'll put links to all of this kit in the description so you can check it out later. For lighting, I have a 3-foot Giesmann Stella which has 4 T5 tubes and a Kessel AP700 plus a Radion XR15 in the middle. Having watched a few BRS TV videos on Kessels, I thought one AP700 with the Stella would be enough for my needs, but I found I wasn't getting enough par. Away from the centre of the tank where I planned on keeping SPS, I was only getting par of around 130 instead of the 350 plus I was aiming for. So I moved the Kessel over to the left hand side of the tank, which sorted the problem, but left me needing another light for the right hand side. The obvious thing to do would have been to buy a Kessel A360X, but I would have also needed to buy a Kessel controller, so it would have cost me too much money and used up another plug socket. So I bought a second-hand Radion instead, which I run off the Reef link I already have. For my tank this is just about enough light because I don't plan on having Aquapora low down, although in an ideal world I'd have a 4-foot Giesmann Stella with 2 Kessel AP700s. That would let me have SPS anywhere I want and would allow me better control over the par levels throughout the tank, as well as giving higher par levels at the top of my rockwork. Moving down, I have a custom aquarium cover made by a UK company called Reef Tops, although I've seen similar covers in the States too. I love the look of this particular one, but having a jump guard of some description is absolutely essential. All fish, no matter what, can and will jump if the mood takes them. For flow, I use 2 Vortec MP40s. Given that flow is at least as important as light, it's an area worth spending a bit of money on. These pumps kick out some serious flow. They keep cables out of the tank and they really do run silent. The only downside for me is that you can't change the angle of the pump, but that's a compromise I'm prepared to make. This being a Peninsula tank, I can't have power heads at both ends without ruining the look. So if anything, I'd like more flow as the far end of my tank is a little still, which is why all the fish hang out there. That's the compromise you make with rimless Peninsula tanks though. And while I haven't tried SPS at that end of the tank yet, the corals I do have there are thriving, so I might just be okay anyway. The new kid on the block with flow is the AI Nero 5. They cost roughly the same as an MP40, but an MP40 is rated at 4,500 gallons per hour against the Nero 5's 3,000 gallons per hour. And the Nero 5 still has a cable in the tank, so for me, the Vortex are still the kings of flow, although I really do like the look of the Nero 5s, and I'll keep an open mind on that one. Before I move to the sump, I have one last bit of kit above the tank, and that's my auto feeder. This is made by Eheim, so it'll run like clockwork forever. It means my fish get fed evenly throughout the day, rather than all at once when I get home from work, and it means I don't have to worry about feeding when I go away for the weekend or on holiday. It's another must for any tank in my opinion. This one lets you dispense up to 8 feeds a day, which is more than enough for a tank like this. Moving to the sump then. My heating is provided by a 200 watt and a 300 watt titanium heater made by Shago, and these are connected to a Simply Aquaria heating controller. Without a heating controller, it's much harder to get completely stable temperature, and the thermostat on the heating controller is more reliable than those found on heaters, so it's less likely to fail and crash your entire tank. My house can get a little cold during the day, particularly in the winter where we are here in the UK at the moment, but 500 watts is more than enough for a 400 litre tank, and if anything I'd be tempted to lose 100 watts if I was setting up again. To power reactors I have a Manifold that runs off a Jekod DCP 4000 pump. A Manifold lets me reduce the number of plugs I have by running one larger pump instead of several smaller pumps to control various reactors. The pump itself is actually pretty impressive considering the price. It's advertised as having sine wave technology that makes it run silent. Now while it isn't silent, it's certainly very quiet and you won't hear it over the other equipment in your tank. And I can happily run 4 reactors off this pump alone because things like phosphate removing media usually require low flow rates. Next up I have a CFL grow lamp for my refugium. Now this thing is absolutely massive and it was a struggle to get it into my sump at all. but that means the light will cover the full spread of the refugium section, so I shouldn't have any problems growing Cheeto whatsoever. There are options from Kessel and AI that are designed specifically for this job, and while I've never used them, as far as I'm concerned, it's hard to justify the extra money. Although I'd imagine purpose-made lights have better adjustability and are less likely to rust, as well as having a much smaller footprint, of course. This 125 watt CFL lamp though cost me £30 from Amazon. The 15 watt Kessel H80 is over £100 more than that, so I think if you have the space, save yourself a bit of cash and take the missus out for a nice meal. You know, or just buy yourself a coral. I don't currently have a phosphate reactor because the Skimmer and Cheeto are keeping phosphates perfect at 0.02, so that means the only piece of equipment currently running off my Manifold is my Eheim UV sterilizer. Now, I don't quarantine fish, which makes a UV sterilizer essential in my opinion. This Eheim system has an 11 watt bulb, although ideally I'd have a much stronger bulb than that. But over the years, going back to my freshwater days, I've come to trust Eheim to be the best. Now, I run this 24/7 and I try to keep the flow down around 800 litres per hour to maximise the chances of killing any nasty parasites that pass through it. So then we have the beating heart of my system, my NIOS Quantum 220 skimmer. This is rated for tanks up to 2000 litres and my tank comes in at about 400 litres after displacement. I like to oversize skimmers to give me the best capacity for controlling bioload and therefore helping me keep as many fish as possible. But if I had my time again, I'd definitely get the next size down. Supposedly using a skimmer rated for bigger tanks makes it run less efficiently than a correctly sized skimmer. That's not my experience with this skimmer. It pulls out thick skimmate regularly, but I don't think you get much benefit from a massively oversized skimmer like this, and they take up a lot of space in your sump. So for me, I think the best skimmer is one that's rated at double the volume of your tank. For this tank then, that'd be a NIOS Quantum 160. Smaller skimmers are also likely to be quieter and save a few pennies too. Another piece of equipment I oversized was my return pump. I have the Ecotech Vectra L1, which is rated at 11,500 litres per hour. So that, ignoring head height, would give 28 times turnover at full blast. Now, I do like having high turnover because it increases flow in my main display tank. And I originally wanted to run my Manifold off this return pump too, but I'm prepared to admit I got this one wrong. If I had my time again, I'd either get an M1 which is rated at 7,500 litres per hour, or maybe even an S1 which is rated at 5,300 litres per hour. That would give sufficient turnover for this tank, and the money and space savings outweigh any benefit of increased flow. Saying that though, the Vectra pumps are fantastic. Mine is bloody massive, but it's absolutely whisper quiet, and that alone is worth the cash. It's also handy that you can connect it up to a Vortec battery backup, so it should avoid a tank crash if you have a power cut. Although I bought my battery backup over a month ago, and I still haven't got round to setting it up yet. Bad Alex. The penultimate piece of kit I want to tell you about today is my dosing pump. This is the Komoa X4 Wi-Fi, which is a pretty popular model, certainly here in the UK. I only need 2 heads as I dose ATI Essentials Pro, but having 2 spare heads is well worth it. I've recently started dosing iodine, which I'm doing manually for now, but I'd like to automate that at some point in the future. And I'm about to connect phytoplankton to my dosing pump, so I can add that daily. And with the X4 Wi-Fi, you can adjust the amount you dose via an app, which makes life much easier than having to press buttons on the unit itself. Now, the keen-eyed amongst you will have noticed that I don't have the standard Red Sea Auto top-off. I found it clogged at random, then failed to stop dispensing at random. And it gets in the way when you're trying to get your hands in the sump. So instead, I've gone for a unit made by a UK company called Refloat. It's absolutely fantastic and much more advanced than most ATOs on the market. It has an accurate infrared sensor that keeps your sump level dead stable, adding fresh water little and often. And it has safety features to prevent disasters. If your freshwater reservoir runs out of water, it automatically turns the pump off to stop it from burning out and beeps at you to tell you to top up your reservoir. And you can set it so the water pump turns off after more than 5, 10, 20 or 60 seconds, which would happen if, for whatever reason, the pump got stuck in the on position. Now sadly, Refloat have just stopped shipping these outside the UK, but if I didn't have this one, I'd probably go for the Tunzi Osmolator. So there you go, that is a full rundown of all the equipment I run on my tank. If you've got any questions, stick them in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, as always, give me a thumbs up and subscribe for future content. And in the meantime, check out some of my other videos. Until next time then, I have been the Reef Dog. Thank you, good night.